Coors Lightington, and welcome to another adventure around Talbot with George. Your host today. Today we're at the Historical Society here at downtown Easton. The gentlemen with me are, introduce yourselves.
I'm Larry Denton. I'm the current president of the Talbot Historical Society.
And I think everybody's familiar with Larry. And now we have a great individual here today.
Seriously? Anyhow, I'm Mike Olmert. I teach in the English department at the University of Maryland, College Park.
And you specialize in these things.
Well, I specialize in the material past, mainly in the 18th century and mainly in the Tidewater. Material past are things you can touch as opposed to ideas,
right,
or literature, which is in books.
Yeah.
So, and I learned this when I was teaching 18th century novels 35 years ago, and I was teaching novels that were published in, say, 1757. And I said to the kids one day, you know, in Annapolis, Alexandria, Georgetown, there are houses that you can visit that were built in the same year or existing in the same year as this novel. Why don't you go there? And the kids loved it, and it broadened and illuminated their understanding of the 18th century literature. So then I was off and running with things as well as ideas. Yeah.
You were hooked into this.
Yeah.
This is great. Well, I love being here, and I know the viewers like it. We can get a lot of feedback on that. And it's really good for everyone to know what this history is. People drive up and down the road, like my wife and I, when we retired, we came from Baltimore to here, and it's just, I'm blown away. When we walk around and look at these things all the time, all over. And when we see buildings, Larry and I were talking earlier, before we got started here, about the churches on this one screen, and it was just, we see them, but you don't know the history. It's just fascinating.
Well, the history never goes away. That's why every building, every structure is a book. Mm-hmm. And it has stories to tell. You just got to go to places like this. Is what museums are for. This is what libraries are for. This is the way culture works. Sometimes it's in our head and we've forgotten about it. I think that's one of the major things about this exhibit. It runs from the earliest style of architecture in this county was classical or neoclassical.
Right. And
people sort of liked it, and we've forgotten why they liked it. These were people who belonged to the British Empire. Empire is important. That empire is based on the Roman Empire. Mm-hmm. And they built big buildings that lasted, that represent their culture. And the British, even in colonial America and England, were used to that. Important buildings meant this was a society and a government that you could depend on for truth and running people's lives. Okay, so and the important buildings meant that these were serious people. So that if a person let's say a Russian sailor comes up in Norfolk in say 1720 or 30 or 40, and he travels to the capital of that colony, Williamsburg, and he sees the governor's palace. He sees where the Burgesses met. He says, oh my goodness, there's no building between here and London that's that big. These must be serious people. And I said Russian because there were all sorts of people coming there, and we know of a case of people who got off a Russian ship, came to Williamsburg, and these people would have come to Easton too when they came up here, and they said, oh look, this isn't the backwoods, this is serious business. These people are running things properly. And it was also a way to say, if you were thinking about taking over this country, we can build buildings like this, so you better not mess with this. That's exactly what the Romans did. When they're expanding their empire, they build buildings.
They're intimidating.
The center of every Roman and Greek city has something called a forum. And then the forum was the temple. It was the basilica where the governor sat. He represented Rome. You don't want to mess with him if you're someplace else, let's say in Turkey or in the Balkans or something like that. These are serious people. They will mess with you right back. Yeah. And the buildings are a part of that. So that's why the founders of the United States, particularly, and these colonies, they all knew how to. Thomas Jefferson did 3 or 4 lines of Greek every day. They all had plenty of Latin and Greek books in their house. Not just the top guys. Anyone that had any education at all knew these things. And they knew how to make themselves look good. And then we call that culture. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
No, you're doing good. Go for it. I like it. This is really true.
George, I think I should jump in and just at this point say one of the fundamental reasons that historical societies exist, and this one in particular, is to connect the past with the present. And we do that with our exhibits, whether it's decoys, whether it's canning, whether it's log canoes. This one has particular interest for us because the buildings are so old. They date from the very beginning of Talbot County, and to have really a nationally recognized expert here to speak to this issue is just it's just wonderful for this society.
This is fascinating, because now I'm getting a clearer view of what's going on. I've driven around Talbot since we moved here, and it's just beautiful. When I see this architecture, like these churches, it's just amazing.
Yeah. Well, to me, the most interesting thing is suddenly, early in the 19th century, it all changes. They stopped building things like the Romans, and they built things like they did in the Middle Ages again. And we know exactly when that date was. That picture of Christ Church St. Michael's, that's the one before the one that you can see on Talbot Street today. And look at it, it's very regular. It's got a Palladian Italian window in the middle. It's got round-handed doors. It couldn't be more classical. That building was built in 1893. It doesn't look, it's not a classical building. It's a medieval building. It looks like a church in a village in northern Europe and someplace. What happened? Well, I can tell you exactly what happened. On the night of the 16th of October, 1834, Parliament burnt down. And everybody, by the way, you know what the biggest city and the most important metropolitan center for all of the Tidewater was? Was it Richmond? Was it Norfolk? Was it Williamsburg? Was it Easton? Was it now? No, it was London. That was the city. It only took 6 weeks to get back there. It took a little longer to get back over here, but they sent their children there. People regularly went back there to work on their investments and have fun and see big buildings. And I was talking about Parliament, sorry. Everyone here knew when Parliament burned down what was going to happen. Well, the architect that took over that job was a man called Charles Berry. And he decided not to build it in a neoclassical way. He said, we're going to start building like they did in the Middle Ages again. And they did. And you can see that today. Parliament today looks like a very medieval building.
Yes,
it doesn't look like that earlier Christ Church St. Michael's.
Right.
It looks like the one either above it. See, that's a Gothic one with the spires and the pointed arches on the windows.
Yes.
It happens like that. And after 1834, just about all major public buildings, they're built in a Gothic style, harkening back to the Middle Ages. Why is that? Because people began talking about the rise of the dark satanic mills. Terrible poverty, terrible disparity between rich and poor. The Prime Minister at the time wrote a novel, he called it The Two Nations, rich and poor. Anyhow, they thought that by getting back to their idea of the Middle Ages, there would be more charity, people would worry about one another, which is what institutions are supposed to do, and they decided that they would build in that model too. So for the next 50, 60, 70 years, all major buildings are Gothic and no longer neoclassical, or neo-Gothic rather than neoclassical. Am I talking too fast?
No.
So all the other churches you can see look like medieval fortresses, right? And they're made of stone, and they're not regular. See, they have lots of roof angles and towers and things. They're not regular and controlled like the neoclassical period is. And then gradually that begins to run out of spinach by the turn of the century, and their buildings now have a combination of classical elements and modern elements with no decoration at all, and medieval neo-Gothic elements. So, yeah, so architecture changes very slowly. Fashions change quickly, except I'm still wearing the things that I wore when I was 18 years old, so I'm sure I could have worn the same. But architecture changed very much slower because you need a lot more people and you need craftsmen. I mean, one of the problems that they had when they switched from classical architecture in 1834 to neoclassical to neo-Gothic is where we get the masons who can do that sort of carving in limestone. So they had to be retrained, and then gradually they got back to it.
Wow.
So anyhow, but you can see that almost all those other churches you see there, except for the very early one, well, it's not a church, but the Quaker Meeting House. That's
Right.
very, very simple and classical. But all the other ones, the one in the upper right is Y Church. And Y Church is the last surviving classical-looking church in the county. All the other ones were changed to make themselves look Gothic. So that's fashion. That's like saying, I don't want that kind of suit. I want the one with the skinny leg scoots that none of us can wear anymore ever again. We just missed that.
George, the other thing we've done in this exhibit is we've taken artifacts from our collections and we have brought them here and matched them with neoclassical and neo-Gothic buildings. So, the artifacts that you see here are here for a purpose.
So,
There's one, George, to keep picking up that idea. There's one chair here, the shield back chair. Is that the shield back chair? You know what that is? There's a shield in the back. Well, that's the Roman shield that they used in warfare.
Yeah.
I mean, every policeman's badge and every FBI badge is that shape
shield.
because of the Romans. It represents Roman authority, Roman dependability. And remember, the Roman Empire lasted. The Roman Republic starts in 510 BC. The Roman Empire starts in 27 BC and goes not to 472, which most of us were taught in high school. The Roman Empire continues in the Eastern Mediterranean and Byzantium till 1453. That's a really long run.
that is a run.
510 to 4, that's almost 2,000 years. There were ups and downs, but that's a long run, and it's because of that shield, and I think those buildings.
I'm a retired police officer.
See that?
Montgomery County, 33 years. And that badge, or shield as you call it, we call it, what I was referred to as the shield.
Yeah.
But nobody gave us that history lesson.
Well, but you were depending on it because the people that you showed it to, they somehow knew that too. That's culture. Ideas that you have that you don't have to rethink, they're just plugged in there. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not so good. That's for another discussion and another exhibit.
We can keep discussing.
No,
I'm fascinated. I love history.
We'll talk about buildings.
I'd want to bring up the issue of the Talbot County Courthouse. We have a program here with the Talbot County Public Schools with high school students, and Professor Ulmer takes them around and talks to them about the churches, other sites. And one of the more fascinating visits, he takes them into the courthouse and tell them about the courthouse, and that stood for power, it stood for authority.
Truth too. Truth
And
and beauty.
And you got the old part of the courthouse where the old brick and mortar work is, where the prison was. The jail.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's still standing.
Yeah.
And that fascinates me. That's a beautiful thing to see.
Well, what the kids are mostly surprised about, in the 18th century, people weren't given jail sentences. You were held in the jail until your trial came up. And then you got, whatever the judgment was, you got that right away. And sometimes it was a whipping or cutting a notch out of your ear because you stole a pig. Well, the courthouse was also where people came to put something on the record. Mm-hmm. I forget which county in Virginia. Let's just say it's Williamsburg. The man came into the Williamsburg courthouse, and they asked the magistrates, asked him why he was there. He said he wanted to put something on record. He said, "Look at my ear; it has a notch out of it." I never stole a pig in my life. People keep saying that to me. In fact, I was in a bar and I got in a fight with this man. He bit my ear off, and he's here to give testimony. And they gave him a document, and that was part of the law. So that you waited. The courthouses weren't open for business every day of the year. Up until the 19th century, just 4 times a year, they were called public days, and you had all the trials, but people waiting that were dangerous were held in the jail, and then they all came out and had and then they got their sentences right away. But no one got jail time. That was expensive. You just got punished, or fined, or often hurt, or humiliated. You put in the stocks, and people came and threw tomatoes at you.
I think we called it the good old days, but I'm teasing, I'm being facetious. No, that's,
So lots of things have changed.
yes, they have, yes, they have.
But the building persists and still represents something that's dependable.
It represents authority,
Yeah.
and that's, society needs authority.
Somebody's got to be in charge.
Pardon?
Somebody's got to be in charge.
Somebody's got to be in charge.
It's just, and what the 18th century was really concerned about was how much governing you do and where do you get the mark. I mean, we can have a society where never again will a 7-Eleven be robbed, ever again, but there'll be a zillion people in jail.
Yeah.
Or we can have a society where we don't punish anybody and the 7-Eleven gets robbed every night. So getting it right is really, really hard.
Good
We all know
scenario, yeah. Should have been in your classes. This is,
Well, at the courthouse, the students were most interested in the room where the prisoners were held, but before they came out and faced the judge, and that was I think for all of us there, that was
it's an awakening thing.
that was in a moment, yeah.
It grabs you.
And then also the layout of the courtroom where the person on trial is sitting right there and he looking right at the dock where the people are giving evidence against him, so that if they're going to be a liar, they have to be a really good liar.
Right.
They can also intimidate people that are telling the truth too, but that also happens. So that drama is really interesting.
How long, this is a little siding, how long would it take to build one of these churches?
Well, let's see, where's the second from the bottom is the church at, it's called Trinity in Oxford. Mm-hmm. We know that ground was broken in 1843. It wasn't finished till the 1890s because they were constantly raising money. They went to New York and got an architect, a really important architect called Upjohn. He designed it, but I guess it was beyond the means of that small town in that part of the 19th century to build it. So it took them 40 years to build that.
Hmm.
But that's nothing. The Middle Ages, it took them 200, 300 years to
right?
finish. They were always adding new sections on them. But that's a honey of a church. It's really an awful nice church, and they keep it up well, and it's still used a lot. I mean, that's why it's... The church below that, St. John's, was a mission church run out of Christ Church, St. Michael's. And because of that, there was never a rector or a vicar living there. And the itinerant priest would come from St. Michael's, probably not every Sunday, but I haven't been able to find out how often they had services there. But in time, a public building like that that's unattended and unwatched gets
Deteriorates?
whacked. Yeah, it deteriorates too, but I think people do things to it. This is a problem with courthouses. The kids like hearing about it too. They, especially if they've got big, like round-headed windows, like the one at Williamsburg. You've been at Williamsburg, and it has great big shutters. And because I told you before that the courthouses weren't open all the time for business, that means there was nobody there. So if you think you got a raw deal from the magistrates at Williamsburg someday, you may get drunk a couple of nights there and come back with a rock and break out every window because no one's going to be around to see it happen. So they quickly learned that you need to have serious shutters on the windows of county courthouses.
There's another little thing from history. Okay. All right, and are these vases, or what do you call in the cases here?
Yeah, they're big. I think they're for flowers and things like that.
Yeah,
but not to plant it. They're for cut flowers and things like that. I think they're also decorative. You can put umbrellas in them too.
Oh, okay, so decoratives. All right.
These were ornamental vases that the wealthy would prize, and as you would walk into someone's prominent person's home, they would display these, and with sometimes with flowers.
Shows their status.
Yeah.
Okay, so these vases represent another phase of 18th century decorative arts. People wanted to have exotic items from all around the world. And the Chinese had a kind of clay called kaolin clay, which was red or brown. And when you fired it to a high temperature, it turned white. And we call that China clay. We still call the dishes made out of it. That's China. It's because it comes from the East, right? So these happen to be from Japan too, but people got them to put in their everything else in the room may be classical, and the house may be neoclassical too, but the Chinese or Japanese vases and pottery fit right in. And we call that the chinoiserie phase, right? There was a big craze for that, and it lasts from the middle of the 18th century right up through the 19th century. Those are survivals of that. So there's people here at Hope House, not 5 miles from where we're sitting here.
Mm-hmm.
They had those in the end of the 18th century in their houses, and nothing else was from the East. Nothing else was Asian in that house except those vases and other things that
So they stood out.
Yeah, that was a big trade, not just bringing tea, things like that from Asia, but Chinese export porcelain.
And when you had visitors come to your home, when they would see that, it would say, wow,
Yeah.
these are prominent people, these are people of means, and that's the message you were delivering with these in your home.
That's the most important. It's not look how cool we are, it's look how powerful we are.
Very good, very good. So this, let me skip over something here for just a minute. You're gonna be having this open house here for the showing? Or?
What we're going to have tomorrow morning, Professor Olmert's going to deliver a lecture here in this room about neoclassical and neo-Gothic buildings and sites. It's sold out. We'll have standing room only.
We're doing 2 of them, though. We're doing...
I think we're just going to do one.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Well,
So,
I get tomorrow afternoon off. I'll play basketball. No.
and then this display will be open through May.
Through May. So public will have plenty of time to come see this and understand it. This is, I mean, it's fascinating to me. I love history, and this is great. What here in this area, the most historic building in this area of Easton?
Just right down the street is the oldest house of worship still in use in the United States, not just in the colonies or in this colony, Maryland, or in this county. It's the Third Haven Meeting House, the Quaker Meeting House.
Oh,
It was established in 1684, I think that's right. And then the present building was adjusted and was in place by 1797. But it's a timber frame building. It's really old. It's a beautiful example of, if you just want to see great woodwork that's still standing after a really long time, go down there and see. It's open. I think it's open every day. You can walk in. You don't have to be Quaker or anything like that. That really is the Quaker mood, isn't it? Just don't take us that seriously, but the door is always open for you. And but it's a great example of early craftsman architecture. It's a timber framed building. You can look at it like you're looking like inside the anatomy of a whale. It's great.
It's the Quaker House.
Yeah, it's the Quaker Meeting House. It's called the Third Haven Meeting House. We think that Third Haven is a version of Tread Avon.
Yeah.
We can't prove that, but that's a good explanation for me for right now.
This building, Neal House, was built by James Neal, who was a Quaker cabinet maker, and he achieved some real wealth by carefully managing his business. But this building dates from, it was built 1804 to 1810, so we're talking 270-year-old building that you're sitting in just now. Across the street, where our museum is the Mary Jenkins House, and that dates from 1780. So there's some very, very old buildings in downtown Easton.
Do you ever do tours of these buildings, or?
Sure. This building's open every Saturday from April through December. The museum is open Thursday, Friday, and Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. For 9 months. So we encourage people to come and we get lots of visitors, and we got lots of folks who were born and raised in Talbot County. It's just a wonderful place to come and take a look at what's gone on before.
It really is. This is eye-opening. All this history is sitting right here.
That's the great thing about buildings. They
Yeah.
are textbooks, and that's also the importance of historical societies too. I mean, we save, this man saves lots of things, and we don't even know how important they are now. But the things that he's saving today will be really important to somebody 200 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
And you just don't know. So you got to save as much as you can, and you have to balance that with the money it takes to save them and to curate them and to protect them. But you want to save as much as you can, because nobody knows what the future is going to be interested in us.
It's right. Did you get families or people come up and say, "Yeah, we're going to sell this house, but my father died or my family died, or I'm going to sell the house, but there's things here, artifacts that you might find of use"?
We get calls all the time from executors of estates, and we often receive a piece of furniture or an artifact of some kind in a will, and that's a fun call to take because you don't know what's going to happen. Just last year, a member of a historic Talbot County family passed away, and the executor called me one day and said he's left you a piece of furniture, and the piece of furniture was made by one of the proteges of the man James Neal who built this house. They always had apprentices. They were always training young people to get into their trade. And here's a piece of furniture that was made by one of Neal's students. It was just fascinating. So yeah, those things are they're fun.
So people watching this who may have something, an artifact or something, they can call you about it.
They can. We don't encourage that a lot because our vault is pretty full. But if you have something that is historic, 100 or 200 years old, and you're thinking about what to do with it, for sure give us a call.
Today we've had an exciting adventure in history. I'm fascinated with it. I could sit here for hours, but nobody else wants to. So this is amazing, and I thank you very much, Professor.
Thanks for having me. Good question.
Thank you for coming up with this idea and all the work you're doing here. This is great.
Good.
Great, Larry. And so I hope you've enjoyed it. We look forward to having everybody watch us again. We'll be updating things and finding new adventures to talk about. Take care, and thank you for watching. Thank you, gentlemen, for the opportunity to do this.
It's been
It's a
fun.
pleasure meeting you. Really, we'll watch you.